categories of context that I think most software projects fall into. And they're different not just because we wanted to make a list, but because there really are important differences between them in the way you handle things. Okay, in the first case, yes? Yeah, I've noticed that. Okay, I'll point down here. In the first case, in-house development means we have a company or a government organization or whatever who, let's say, their primary purpose is not to be software developers. Their primary purpose is something else. Maybe they're a publishing company. Maybe they're trying to administer farmland. Maybe they're whatever. And for their own purposes, they decide that they need a new software package. They cannot find one that they can buy which meets their needs. All of the ones that are available on the shelf are wrong-headed. They don't use the right terminology. They don't do the right kind of analysis, whatever. And so they decide that the best approach for them is to create their own software which will exactly fit their needs. And at that point, they will either have or decide to create a software organization, a group of developers, various levels of expertise, or maybe they will already exist, and you people will be part of that. Now, one of the functions of anybody who is in software is to be able to relate your specialized knowledge about computers, computer architecture, computer engineering to another specialty. You have to be able to talk to a medical doctor who's going to be using your software in the operating room, a book publisher or whatever. They don't know anything about computers. You've got to be able to communicate to them. This is relatively easy to do if those people are in your same organization. Okay? Their boss ultimately is your boss. When there's a disagreement, you know who to go to. You know, whoever the project leader, the president of the company, the whatever. It's relatively easy. They're down the hall. Maybe they're on the other side of the world and you're doing it by email, but still, it's one organization. When there's a question of competing needs, competing goals, in order to make this do what you want, we need 3 months more. Sorry, you can't have 3 months more. Well, in that case, we've got to do some less work. What can you surrender? It's a negotiating process, relatively easy to do, which doesn't mean always easy, but easier. Second category is development for an external client. Same company, publishing company. They look at this problem, they say, we don't have the software, we can't buy it. We don't want to develop software for it. We're going to hire Thai consulting company down the street here who specializes in in software development. We're going to say, this is what we need. How much do you charge? How soon can it be done? And probably they're going to say, well, we're going to not only talk to Thai Consulting down the street, we're going to talk to Singapore Consulting over there, company. Okay? And we'll buy whichever is cheaper. So, at that point, you've got assuming you're working for one of those companies, you have to come up with a price and a time schedule. You don't know what the competition is going to do. And you're probably not all that clear on what the needs are because these things are frequently not written very well. And in the worst possible case, your company is going to commit to doing something for a certain price that has no idea what is. And that means you have to do it, and you still don't know what it is. Okay, so this is the case of having an external client. The purchaser, the customer, thinks that they know what they're going to get, and they think they know how much it's going to cost. In actuality, it's a very weak position for them because they can get just about anything. But somebody has to write a contract, maybe a whole bunch of contracts, a lot of lawyers involved. Okay. And let's say you get to the point of saying, well, we need an extra 3 months to do this, or we have to cut back on the functionality. Now the communication becomes much more difficult. And what happens when communication becomes difficult? Lots of things happen, but people get nasty, people go on vacation, things like that. But the most important thing that happens in a professional context is you have to be able to defend concretely why you think it's going to take more time. So at that point we have process, we have documentation, we have evidence, we have engineering. Okay? At that point we have to be able to pull out stuff and say, this is why. This is why it happened this way. This is why it's going to happen this way. We have to solve this. Okay? And this is not hand waving. This is not, well, I think it should take, of course, ultimately there may be some guesses involved, but we hide that. Okay, the third category, which again is still quite different, is the mass market software, where in effect you don't really know who your customer is. Right? You have a sort of an ideal customer. You think, there has got to be a need for somebody who can make sandals that have rabbit ears sticking out of them. I bet if I could make some sandals with rabbit ears sticking out of them, looking like rabbits. What's the word for rabbit in Thai? Anyway, if you could make sandals that look like an ant, a moth, right? There'd be a great market for them. You could sell millions of them. Okay, but you don't really know who is going to buy these things. And it's the same with software. I think if I could make some software that would play a really good imitation game of tennis on the screen, I could sell millions. I'd become a fortune, retire, not have to teach in the university anymore. But I don't know that. Okay. So this is a very different kind of a customer because there's no negotiation that's possible. Okay, because there's no real customer there. The customer appears when I finally make this thing happen and nobody buys it. Or I hire somebody to go out and do a market survey, but one doesn't trust those things too much. They're important tools, but you don't really know if you go ask somebody if they're going to buy a weird pair of sandals, whether they really will or not. Description is not the reality. So those are I think really the three major types of context. I'll talk in a few minutes about some software, some things that might look like software projects that do not fit into these categories. So when we look at this, when we look at a particular software project, we have to look at the question of who the stakeholders are. That is, who are the people or organizations who care one way or another? The customers, my boss, the board of investment, okay, lots of people, my lawyers, lots of people have an interest in this, and the fact is that not as individuals maybe, but as groups, their interests are very different. The people who own stock in my company want my company to make a profit. That's all they care about. Okay. As a professional, I want to have pride in my workmanship. I want it to do a good job. And as a person who's working at it on a day-by-day basis, I don't want to die of boredom or fall asleep. That's my interest in it as a developer. My customer wants something that's going to solve their problems, whatever they are, and maybe they don't even know what they are. Many stakeholders. And we have to find out who they are. We have to find out who all of them are. And that's one of the processes we're going to be looking at in considerable detail.